An American soldier was captured by the Vietnamese, but these poor guys didn't even suspect that soon their captive would unleash hell on them. A prisoner named John Rambo is working at a stone quarry, carrying out his punishment for his recent crimes. One of the guards orders John to follow him. At the gate, Rambo is met by his former commander, Colonel Samuel Trotman. He offers the protagonist a deal. John can either spend another 5 years in the quarry or take part in a secret military operation in the East. Of course, the choice is obvious. Rambo flies to a military base in Thailand. Trotman meets him there and introduces John to Marshal Murdoch, the head of the operation. Murdoch reads Rambo's file and asks his assistant to give him a Coke. Rambo notices that there is only one in the vending machine. This is very strange. Murdoch gives John a briefing about the Vietnamese camp where the military operation will take place. It turns out that this is the same camp from which Rambo once escaped. The protagonist's mission is to infiltrate it and take pictures of prisoners of war if there are any. He is not allowed to engage with the enemy under any circumstances. Rambo is greatly surprised by this condition. An hour later, they meet again at the command center. Murdoch assures John that the operation will be successfully completed. A large technical complex will operate at the military base to help Rambo. After the landing, the protagonist must contact a local agent named Kobar. Rambo is preparing for his mission, sharpening his knife, checking shifts, ammunition and arrows. After arranging all the necessary equipment, he walks to the plane and informs Trotman that Murdoch is a liar and that he doesn't trust him. John flies the transport plane to the drop site. He puts on a helmet and goggles, ties himself to the plane's cable and jumps. But his gear accidentally snags onto the side of the plane, leaving the protagonist hanging in the air under the wing. Rambo takes his knife, cuts the bag and harness straps, falls, and finally opens his parachute. Meanwhile, at the headquarters, Murdoch is eager to cancel the operation, as he expects a failure. Trotman replies that John will definitely succeed. After landing, Rambo runs through the jungle along the river. Because of the extreme jump, he has lost almost all his equipment except for a combat knife and a bow with several arrows. Rambo stops to consult his compass, and at that moment, a snake crawls up behind him. John immediately grabs it with his hand and keeps on his way. He approaches the ancient statues and notices someone suspicious there. Rambo immediately attacks this person with a knife. It turns out to be a Vietnamese girl. She is his coordinator, Agent Kobar. They head to the river to continue their way on the water. The protagonists get to the pirate settlement and ask them for a boat. The Vietnamese pirates look very suspicious and hostile. Besides, they have guns. Nevertheless, money helps to solve the problem. So Bao negotiates with the pirates, and they let the main characters on board. John tells the girl about his past, and Tsobao confesses that she dreams of moving to America to start a quiet life. Rambo states that he has only one desire: to win and survive. Meanwhile, at the headquarters, Trotman informs Murdoch that he wants to take a group of soldiers to evacuate the prisoners and rescue Rambo at dawn. At first, Murdoch refuses, but then he agrees with Trotman. Late at night, Rambo and Tsobao reach the camp and observe the situation from an ambush. They see a beautiful girl in a blue dress ride up to the gate on a scooter. There are 2 sentries at the entrance. One of them slaps her waist and allows her to pass. Tsobao explains that this is a local girl of loose morals. Rambo assembles his bow and attaches the tips of his arrows before entering the camp. Tsobao doesn't want to let him in, remarking that he's ordered only to take pictures, not to interfere. But Rambo doesn't listen to her. He cuts the wire at the fence and sneaks inside, while Tsobao silently follows him. Many sentries are walking around the camp. One of the soldiers comes out of the restroom, but John remains unnoticed, managing to hide around the corner. He crawls under a house and hears a local girl laughing. Nevertheless, he moves on. After exploring the camp in detail, Rambo finds a place where prisoners are held. They look extremely exhausted because of the horrible conditions in which they are forced to live. Lots of spiders and rats are crawling around them. Rambo goes downhill and notices that one of the captives is tied to a cross. The protagonist releases him and takes him away from the camp. They hide in the bushes and the man says that there are many other captives, but John plans to release them later. They attempt to leave the camp but stumble upon a Vietnamese soldier. Rambo deals with him by a throwing knife. One of the sentries from the tower shines a spotlight at them, but Rambo shoots him with a bow. Meanwhile, another sentry discovers Tso Bao in the bushes and points a gun at her. However, Rambo's next arrow solves this problem. The protagonists successfully leave the camp with the captive. In the morning, an alarm goes off at the Vietnamese camp, and all the soldiers are sent in pursuit. The Vietnamese troops run through the woods looking for the intruders. At the same time, Trotman and his soldiers fly a military helicopter in search of Rambo. The prisoners, rescued by the main characters, admit that they came just in time, as the captives are constantly transported from one place to another. This poor guy has been in captivity for a year. He is extremely exhausted and can't keep walking, so John has to carry him on his shoulder. They head to the extraction point, where a pirate boat is already waiting for them. The protagonists sail away, but Vietnamese soldiers manage to notice them and report it to the other soldiers' bar radio. Soon, Rambo spots an enemy patrol boat in the distance. Suddenly, the pirates point their guns at the main characters, and even punch John in the face. Turns out, the pirates have sold them to the Vietnamese. Rambo takes the knives hidden in his belt and deals with one of the pirates. Someone shoots, but John also grabs a gun and eliminates the rest of the traitors. The enemy boat approaches the protagonist and starts shooting at them with a machine gun. Rambo asks his companions to jump into the water, while he himself stays in the boat. Despite the constant machine gun fire, he finds a Soviet hand grenade launcher and shoots at the Vietnamese boat. Rambo is about to jump into the water, but one of the surviving pirates grabs him by the throat. In the meantime, the burning boat is sailing towards them. John pulls out his knife and solves the problem with the pirate, then jumps off the vessel just a second before it collides with the burning boat. John and his companions head towards the agreed-on extraction point. He bids farewell to Tso Bao and continues on his way with the rescued prisoner. Soon, they are overtaken by Vietnamese soldiers with mortars. At that moment, a military helicopter with Colonel Trotman appears in the sky. The American soldiers spot Rambo and shoot at the enemies from the air. Murdoch finds out about this incident and gets furious. He orders his soldiers to leave the room and personally contacts the helicopter by radio, ordering the rescue team to stop this operation immediately. Turns out, he is not interested in rescuing the prisoners. Colonel Trotman asks the pilots to land and rescue Rambo, but one of the crew members points a gun at him. John waits for the helicopter to descend, but it flies away. The protagonist is surrounded by a group of Vietnamese soldiers, so he drops his weapon and surrenders. The helicopter returns to base. A disgruntled Trotman enters the headquarters and argues with Murdoch. We find out that the purpose of the entire operation was to get pictures of the empty camp and to pacify the people. No one expected to find the prisoners there. And of course, there was no real intention of helping them. The Senate has no interest in starting a war again, so Murdoch hides the truth. Meanwhile, Rambo is taken captive. He is tied up and placed in a stinky neck-deep sewage pit. A helicopter with Soviet paratroopers arrives at the Vietnamese base. They are led by Lieutenant Colonel Podolsky. He notices Rambo and demands to pick the captive up and wash him before the interrogation. In the evening, Podolsky interrogates Rambo and brutally tortures him. The man realizes that Rambo is immune to physical abuse. Even the electric grate doesn't frighten him. In the meantime, Tso Bao, dressed up as a girl of loose morals, arrives at the camp and disarms one of the soldiers. After getting a weapon, she sneaks to the hut where John is held and hides under it. Podolsky reads intercepted communication between the evacuation team and the American military headquarters, and then threatens to torture another prisoner of war with a red-hot knife. At that point, John agrees to contact the Americans, but only to warn Murdoch that he will avenge his betrayal. Rambo grabs a microphone and uses it to neutralize two enemies. Sobao shoots at the others from under the floor. They leave the hut. John deals with one of the soldiers and takes his rifle, after which a gunfight ensues. The protagonists escape the camp and hide in the woods. A military helicopter is searching for them from the air, and Vietnamese soldiers are running through the forest. However, they manage to hide and survive the night. Rambo and Sobao develop a romantic relationship. They kiss and intend to continue on their way. But suddenly, an enemy spots them and shoots Sobao. Turns out the enemies have already surrounded them. John fiercely shoots back, but the girl can't be saved. In her last moments, Sobao asks Rambo to never forget her. John takes her pendant and buries his girlfriend in the jungle. Filled with hatred and desire for revenge, Rambo grabs his bow and massacres a large number of enemy soldiers. He heads to the local village, eliminating dozens of Vietnamese along the way. John lures the soldiers into a thicket of dry bamboo and sets it on fire, leaving the enemies no chance of escape. After which, he shoots arrows with explosive tips and blows up a bridge with military vehicles. The Soviet helicopter overtakes John near the waterfall and drops a bomb on him. Rambo falls into the water. As the helicopter descends, the protagonist surfaces, climbs aboard, throws the Soviet crew out of it, and flies to the Vietnamese base. Using the rockets and machine guns mounted on the helicopter, Rambo destroys all the enemy soldiers in the Vietnamese camp and rescues all the American prisoners of war. They get on board and fly back to their base. A heavy Soviet helicopter piloted by Lieutenant Podolsky appears out of nowhere. An air battle ensues and many of the captives get injured, but they manage to eliminate the onboard gunner. John plays dead and lands in the river. Podolsky loses alertness, and taking advantage of the moment, Rambo blows up the enemy helicopter. The main character successfully reaches the American military base. In a fit of rage, he breaks into the headquarters, shoots all the equipment with a machine gun and attacks Murdoch. The latter tries to somehow justify himself, and John plunges his knife next to the man's head, saying, "Mission accomplished." Rambo is awarded a second Medal of Honor, but he refuses and suggests that Trotman gives it to the prisoners of war, as they deserve it. He doesn't want to return to the army either. Looks like the hero is really tired after all.